Importantly, the humans came from India. This is out of India hypothesis rather than the mostly accepted, proven idea that human beings originated in Africa, came out of Africa and spread throughout. So let me just take you to a journey about 600 years before the Common Era. And this is a bit of a disturbance. This is a map of Eurasia, and this is the Pontic region above the Black Sea. I don't have a pointer, but you can see the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. And between those two are the Caucasian Mountains. And these people who are called Scythians by the Greek, and Josephus, who was writing after the passing of Jesus, he was with the Romans, though he was a Jew. He wrote the Antiquities of the Jews, and he wrote about you can see the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, and all the way from Ukraine. Ukraine is in the news, so you can see, and all the way down, almost north of Greece, Macedonia, and this entire region all the way to the Altai Mountains in China, north of China. These people were horsemen, they were nomads, they were free people, and they raided everything. They had no homes, so no enemy could defeat them. And then they spread in this entire region, and they came down sometimes to raid through the Derbent Pass, because the Caspian Sea had receded, and so this Caucasian Mountains, there was a pass, and later on the Persians, the Sassanids built a wall here called the Derbent Pass. But they also came down through the Dariel Pass and raided all these different areas. Exceedingly dynamic people and very powerful. Even Dara Sikandar se wo marde faqir aula. You know about Dara? He had a great empire. He was a Muwahid. He believed in one God. He could not defeat them. He went over from here and chased them all over the place. So why am I telling you about this? Because this has to do with the history that I'm going to talk about, but how the genes from this region spread across Eurasia. So these are the different empires that came from time to time. This is the Achaemenid Empire under Dara or Darius, and it was there from all the way down to the Sutlej River. And then same thing with the Alexander's Empire. So this is just a point here to make that India, as known to the Western world, was what is now Pakistan. There was no concept of India beyond the Sutlej River. That was later invented by the British and then taken on by the founders of the current Republic of India in order to appropriate the culture, civilization of the entire region. So now I want to introduce you to Professor Beckwith, Christopher Beckwith. He's Emeritus Professor at University of Indiana, and the received knowledge or information is that first there was Brahmanism, then there was Hinduism and Jainism, and then Buddhism. He has completely turned that over. And he says that Buddhism came first, and it came from the Scythian people that I told you about. The Scythian people, he says, gave 4 great thinkers to 4 different nations. First philosopher was the Anarchus, who was half Scythian, half Greek, and he went to Greece. He was one of the earliest philosophers of Greece, predating Plato. And the second one was Zoroaster, and that was a gift of the Scythians to Persia, to Iran. And he came and he taught them about one God. that was later changed on by other people at the time of Cyrus. But he taught about one God. That was Zoroaster. He was a Scythian, and he was a gift in the sense to the Iranian people. And the third was Buddha. He's known as Sakya Muni. That means the sage of the Scythians. And he came from what is now Afghanistan and Pakistan, and then went down to India to teach them about skepticism. That I don't know. I cannot be an extreme this way or that way. That was part of his philosophy. So just let me tell you a little bit about Professor Beckwith. He was a MacArthur Fellow, and his interest is Central Eurasia, history of cultures and medieval Central Asia. He specializes in Asian languages and is linguistics, and he knows Old Tibetan, he knows Chinese, he knows Sanskrit, and many other like Old Turkic, Uzbek, and so forth, Japanese, and he has written about it. He's written about early Buddhism and so forth. So he's qualified, very qualified, and this is a list of some of his books: The Tibetan Empire, Medieval Tibeto-Burman Languages, Japanese languages, and so forth. But the book that I came across, which he published in 2012, was The Warriors of the Cloisters, and how these people who were Buddhists, they gave the idea of the university to the Muslims and the madrasa, and how it spread across Central Asia into North Africa and into Spain, and from there to Europe. So the universities that were created in Europe came from this. This is his book. If you have a chance, you should read it. It tells you the relationship between the Muslims and Buddhists in our own backyard, Central Asia, Afghanistan. And then his latest book is The Scythian Empire, Central Eurasia and the Birth of the Classical Age from Persia to China. Just published that. It's a very interesting book. It's a whole different chapter. So these are his main books that are available in the market: Empires of the Silk Road, Scythian Empire, Greek Buddha. So I'm going to talk about the Greek Buddha. The current beliefs of the Buddhists are that Buddhism was founded by an Indian. A reasonably accurate account of the Buddha's life and teachings are given in the Pali Canon. Pali is a language. The Buddhists taught karma and rebirth and ways to nirvana as a release from the karmic round. Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. Taoism was founded independently by a Chinese sage called Lao Tzu, its similarities to Buddhism being a coincidence. Buddhism emerged in a context of early Brahmanism, which it reacted against. Buddhism emerged alongside the new religious movements reacting against Brahmanism, such as Jainism and the heterodoxies of Buddhism called the Ajivikas. Buddhism emerged in a developing urban civilization in the Ganges Valley, Pataliputra. Pyrrhonism was a Greek philosopher who came with Alexander, and he discussed philosophy with the Buddhists, was a Hellenistic philosophy which it could be said to be influenced by Pyrrho's visit to India. Now Beckwith says this is all wrong. What you have been taught for hundreds of years is incorrect, and he has done actual research. He has gone and looked at the sources. He's looking at the linguistics, how the language was formed, and he's an expert in that very special area. For example, he says that there's nothing written in Sanskrit since maybe 10, 15 years before the Common Era. Or he says that there's nothing written about Brahmanism at all. There's no written record. He says the Buddha was not an Indian. Instead, the Buddha was a Scythian, people living to the north of Persia, and in contrast with the Greeks, and he was called Shakyamuni, that is the Scythian sage. You know about Sistan? Who knows about Sistan in Iran? Anybody know about Sistan in Iran? Sistan का नाम सुना है किसी ने? Sistan means Scythian. It means Saka. Saka Empire. That is actually derived from Scythian. The Pali Canon, he says, was composed 500 years after the death of Buddha. This is what they use. As you use the Quran, they use that Pali Canon. And offers very little reliable information about the Buddha. Most of the information has been made up to fit later models of what Buddhism is that developed after the 1st century of the Common Era. He says the Buddha did not teach karma and rebirth, but only the balanced skeptical arguments, Pyrrhonism of the middle way, and the release he taught was not from the rounds of existence, but rather from the polarizing constrictions of metaphysical views, both positive and negative. However, the fundamental Four Noble Truths and Noble Eight may now seem to Buddhism, they are a later addition attributed to the Buddha. We have seen it in our own religion, how things have been added over time. So this is not unusual. Same thing with Christianity and Judaism. Lao Tzu may be one of the same person as Buddha. He was a Chinese sage. So the Taoism is effectively an early form of Buddhism in China. So Buddhism, and please note this, was the first religious movement to emerge in South Asia, and others such as Brahmanical Hinduism and Jainism have copied it and sought to compete with it by claiming similar antiquity. Hamare yahan bhi hai. That's the idea. You know, we were before you. Buddhism did emerge in a setting with developing cities, but in Gandhara, northwestern India or Pakistan, more subject to the Persian and Greek influences, not the still rural Ganges Valley, even if the Buddha had then traveled to the Ganges Valley. Remember that when Alexander came, they only went up to the Sutlej, and similarly with Dara and others, because beyond that was unknown. Pyroskepticism was so radically discontinuous from other Greek philosophies that it must be considered early Buddhism rather than Greek. So he's trying to point out that Pyro came with Alexander and learned from the Buddhist sages and went back, and he calls that early Buddhism. So now look at this. So this has completely refuted the Hindutva philosophy of that we preceded everything else in South Asia. And here is a Scythian from Central Asia or Afghanistan who is actually the first in terms of spreading a faith or a philosophy or a religion in all of South Asia. It's quite radical, but it completely upturns and demolishes the entire Hindutva philosophy. Now the second thing this Hindutva says is that humankind came from India. And we know from science, I'm a geneticist, it's absurd. No real scientists believe that. But here, let me show you. So this is the out of Africa hypothesis and how humans came out of Africa about 60,000 years ago or 100,000 and then spread into Europe and via Arabia into the rest of the world, and from there onwards, and then from the Bering Strait down. And you can see the thousands of years that how early they spread and how they spread. Nothing to do with spread out of India. So here's a paper now that just came out, and it is written by, the senior author is an Indian, Priya Murjani, but they're all in Berkeley, in California. So here's the summary of this paper. Nearly all the South Asia's ethnic and linguistic groups, that means all the way from the Hindu Kush Mountains down to the tip of South Asia, are the product of three ancient Eurasian populations who met and mixed. First were the local hunter-gatherers, 60,000 years ago. Then Middle Eastern farmers, Iranian farmers or Anatolian farmers, and then Central Asian herders, the same region that I showed you, but 4,000 years ago. They're called the Yamanaya people. And they came down, they had chariots and they had horses, and they buried their people with horses in them. Hindus don't bury their dead. It is also strengthens the claim that the Proto-Indian European, the ancestral language that gave rise to modern language from English to Russian to Hindi or Sanskrit or Prakrit, originated on the steppes of Asia. That's why the importance of the steppes. Murjani and her colleagues argue that the settlers who gave way to the contemporary Indians were part of a single migration out of Africa 50,000 years ago. Modern individuals sampled derive 1 to 2% of their ancestry from the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, just like the Europeans. But Indians collectively carry a stunning variety of these archaic genes compared with other worldwide populations. 90% of all Neanderthal genes that have made their way into human population were present in the 2,700 Indian genomes. These 2,700 people are part of a dementia study, longitudinal study, and that's how they got the DNA from every part of India, not Pakistan. The researchers also identified several new candidates for the Neanderthal Denison genes and have given their descendants some evolutionary advantage. And here is you can see that how much of the Neanderthal and the Denisovan gene compared to other populations are present in the Indian population. It's in megabases on one side. And this buttresses what anthropologists have known for a long time, linguists, that the Proto-Indo-European language groups are derived from Celtic, Celtic, they're called Ayer. Ayer is Ireland, is Aryan or Aryan, is the same thing. They all came from there. Italian, Germans, Balto-Slavic, Indo-Iranian, which includes Farsi, Kurdish, Pashto, other Prakrit languages, Hindi and so forth, but not the South Indian languages. And then there are the rare ones, the Albanian, Greeks, Armenian, and Anatolian, and in China, the Tocharian. So I want to give you a breath now. So I've told you two major demolitions of the Hindutva philosophy. First one was that they said they had precedent in terms of religion, Hindu religion, Brahmanism first, then Hinduism, and then Jainism, and so forth, then Buddhism, and then Sikhism, and so forth. But this man, Beckwith, he's not a Muslim, he's demolished their entire facade of false history by showing that Buddhism came first and didn't come from India, it came from outside. So you understand the importance of this. It completely demolishes their claim. The second thing I told you about, that their claim about out of India, is nonsense. We know that as physicians and scientists, but here I have shown you in just a papers published, not published yet, but February 2024, it is on it's free, you can get it. Now I want to take you to another area, which you may find a little disturbing, but I think it's good to do research and know about things. So let me start by saying, यूं तो मिर्ज़ा भी हो, सैयद भी हो, अफ़गान भी हो, ये तो बताओ मुसलमान भी हो. This, I think, sets the dichotomy that somehow genetics gives you righteousness in your genealogy. That on the basis of your genealogy, you are righteous. But we know from the Quran that the father of Ibrahim alayhi salam, he had 50% of the genes of Ibrahim alayhi salam. He is not to be forgiven. even though one of the greatest prophets asked Allah to forgive him. And then you have the son of Nuh, another great prophet. He's also condemned. And then you have the uncle of the prophet, which is condemned in the Quran, Abu Lahab. So there's no genetic precedence in terms of claiming any kind of morality or greatness. Mirza bhi ho, Sayyid bhi ho, Afghan bhi ho. And the reason is in the biology. The biology is very clear. This is, you must have seen this in your classrooms, this is a meiosis. A reduction division, otherwise the number of chromosomes and the number of genes would keep expanding, and it would be impossible to have a coherent genome and a coherent phenome of any kind. So there's a reduction division in which you get half your chromosomes from your mother, half from your father. For men, they get the Y chromosome from the father, and everybody gets from the thing. So, okay, he says it's 5 minutes. Okay. All right, so, but there is another thing to it. There's recombination that takes place. So you're a mosaic of your grandparents. You're not identical because of this recombination between the chromosomes that takes place. So there is genealogical ancestry. You say that my father comes all the way from Sher Shah Suri, or you say he comes from the Chinese, Confucius, or whatever. Or as I was told by my mother that, and she showed me the pedigree, we come from Bahauddin Zakaria. That's genealogical ancestry. And it may be 100% true. But from a genetic point of view, it's meaningless. Because every generation you have the number of genes that you get from that one common ancestor. Is that clear? So by the time you get to the 12th or the 15th generation, you have nothing left. So within 300 years, it's all gone, or even 200 years. What you're left with is your mitochondrial genome, which is a few genes, and a few genes on the Y chromosome if you're a male. And that can go back to 60,000 years, but that's a very common shared thing. So think about this. People who claim righteousness based on their genes or their genetic genealogy, it is false. But if they have been taught the right things, if they have the right culture, then that's a different thing. That's a very individual thing. But you can create a culture within a family or a group or people that is righteous. What to do with your genetics? So the biggest problem in Islamic history is the conflict of claiming righteousness through genealogy. And you can trace all the wars that took place early in Islam. First fitna, second fitna have all to do somehow with this notion that was not acceptable to the Prophet, was not acceptable to the first three caliphs. So I'll move on to now talk about research, give you one example. I am not a religious scholar, I am not a muhaddiseen, but I came across this and I was intrigued by this man, Muhammad Akram Nadavi. He came from a small village in India and then he did his PhD from Lucknow in Arabic literature and so forth, and he went on to England and in Oxford. Then somebody showed him, he said, look what these Orientalists are saying about Islam, that you treat your woman very badly, they are uneducated, they don't do anything. And he said he was stunned, so he did research. And he did research for 15 years. And he produced 43 volumes of 10,000 women muhaddiseen from the time of the last 1400 years. And now he has found another 1,000. 43 volumes in Arabic, but this one volume in English, you can see. So that's religious. And I'll end with this. They're showing red over here. I won't stop you from going for tea if you want to. But some years ago, I got an email saying, now, by the way, there were 3 Nobel laureates who were born in what is now Pakistan. They were all born before Pakistan in science. That's the only Nobel laureate that's reasonable. So I got this email saying that in 1400 years, the Islamic bloc has not produced a single life-saving medicine, and it was attributed to Dr. Abdul Salam. When I said I did not agree, and I could name 3 Muslim Pakistanis just from the top of my head, who made life-saving discoveries in the last few decades, I was challenged to name them. Because Salam had said, almost every potent living medicament of today, from penicillin upwards, has been created without our share of input from any of us from the Muslim world, and this was published in the Renaissance of Sciences in the Islamic countries. So one should never make, even if you're a Nobel laureate, these sort of sweeping statements, especially if it is not your field. He was not a physician, he was not a biologist, and he was not a geneticist, he was not a pharmacologist, he was a physicist. And that is my point was that you have a narrow field and you're going to work on it all your life because the knowledge has to be expanded. You can't know everything. So I just looked it up and I found I guess I'm missing a slide. Oh, here it is. So first one that I thought about was Ayub Khan Umayyah. He was, when I was at the NIH, he was there, he was head of neurosurgery and he produced the Umayyah reservoir. How many lives has it saved? How many children were given chemotherapy and antibiotics and so forth? This is my last slide, by the way. Then I came across Qazi Muhyiddin Ahmed. This is all within Pakistan's time. He was a graduate of King Edward Medical College. His parents had migrated from India. He studied at the King Edward Medical College, 1930 to 1999. And he is the inventor of the first inferior vena cava umbrella that prevented clots from traveling to the heart, preventing so many fatal pulmonary emboli. Did he save lives? Apparently he did. Then you have Dr. Muhammad Aslam Nasir. He's still alive, 61, graduate of Nishtar Medical College, inventor of the eye gel that is given in an emergency for breathing so you don't have to intubate the patient. And it's all over the world. It's used in ambulances in England and UK and so forth. So you can read about it. You should be proud. And then I hear now there's a portable MRI from Aga Khan and the algorithms by a Pakistani physician. But then we go back and we say Muslims invented variolation for smallpox. And it was practiced from Turkey to Libya to Bengal. And I have a reference here. And if the world had followed the Prophet's example of quarantine, we would have a much easier time with it than we have had. Now the Chinese did that, and their mortality rates are very, very low. And I think Pakistan is also one of the successful countries. Then you have the non-halal, non-tayyib animals like bats, like pangolins, like civet cats. They spread the SARS viruses. You see the beauty of prohibition of such animals? Then you have pig farms. Pig farms are recombination machines. They take the avian flu virus and they take the human virus and they mix it up and you have a new component every year almost. So you can imagine that what science is telling us today is about how animals, most of the diseases, communicable diseases, come from animals. There are 26 disorders from dogs alone, but you have all these, measles, all these came, cowpox, smallpox, they came from animals, SARS. So the Middle East and North Africa region has the lowest HIV prevalence in the world, 0.1% living with HIV. This was 2018. In contrast, the Sub-Saharan Africa, highest HIV prevalence of 6.8%. So you can see that the Muslims have contributed a lot, and these are few. I'm not an expert on history of medicine, but you can see that that statement made by the Nobel laureate was a false statement. And I'll end by thanking you for inviting me, and I'm available for any discussions you may have, because this was a lot of new material, at least for me, and there may be questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Tipu Siddique, for this scholarly talk. Now, I invite Professor Tariq Rafi, who is the chief guest of this inaugural session of the PIMA Convention 2024. Professor Tariq Rafi is the chairman, Higher Education Commission, Sindh. He is the former vice chancellor of the Jinnah Sindh Medical University. I invite and request Professor Tariq Rafi, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahamduhu wa nusalli ala rasulil kareem. I am really grateful to the organizers of this PIMA 27th Biennial Convention to ask me to be here. It's really an honor. And to have some of my teachers here, I'm really honored to see them over this very, I should say, early in the morning. A large number of gathering here is very encouraging to see, especially the doctors on a Saturday. PIMA differs from other medical or other associations in a way that it has got a very important combination of Islamic ideology with your professional knowledge. And I was going through and I was told that in 1979, PIMA started with 50 people who have shared the same ideas about how to combine the Islamic knowledge, the Islamic things with the professional knowledge. Medical education and doctors play a very vital role in our society. All professions are noble, but doctors and medicine holds a completely different place in educational sector throughout the world, not only in Pakistan. It is one profession where you not only learn your knowledge, apply to your patients, but at the same time you have the big opportunity of serving the ailing humanity and getting the kind rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't say that other professions do not have, but this is one place where we can, with our dedication and commitment, be able to do so. As doctors, it's our duty that not only that we should be applying our knowledge to our patients, but we should also keep ourselves abreast with the latest development that is taking place throughout the world. And I'm very happy to note that PIMA, through its seminar, symposia, continuous medical education program, is playing a very vital and important role in giving this knowledge to our doctors who need to upgrade their knowledge what they have learned during their medical schools and to keep abreast with what is happening throughout the world. At the same time, one thing that is lacking in all our educational sectors is that we are being given an education in the universities, in the colleges, in the schools. In medicine, I can say, being a doctor myself, that the best of the books that are there, we are taught. But unfortunately, no one is paying attention to the ethical grooming of our young generation. That is one thing which is lacking And that is one thing which is really bothering to all of us. In this era of digitalization and the social media that has been there, it has now become more imperative for us to give ethical and moral training to our students in addition to the professional knowledge that we are imparting to them. That can be done in two ways. One, having classes, having lectures, and the second, and I think that is much more important, is being a role model for your students yourself. Most of the students, when I was in medical college, I had role models in my teachers. And I always wanted to be one of them. My reason to be in ENT was because one of my teacher, who was my role model, was an ENT professor. So many of us follow that because they have got role models. Do we think that we are, as a teacher myself, are role models for my students? Have I been giving them that ethical and moral example that they should be following? What is the basic reason of this decline in our ethical and moral standards, not only in education institution, throughout the country? Education institutions does not work in silos. They are a part of the whole society. And unfortunately, the society in our country is on a decline. And when it's on a decline, everything is going down. But as teachers, as medical professionals, we have to play our role, and we have not to only educate our students, our doctors, for the professional acumen that we need to have them, but at the same time, we need to tell them what are the moral values. And it could not be a better example for being Muslims that we can inculcate into them the ethical and moral values which our religion has taught to us. Honestly, I'm telling you that we, though maybe very senior professors, but we have confined our knowledge to a tunnel thinking that is confined only to our profession. We do not look around for other things that we should also be learning, a knowledge from other sources, what's happening throughout the world, what is the current situation politically, what is the things happening in the world. As a professor of ENT, I'll only talk about, think about, and educate and talk about ENT. But I'm not talking about what's happening. I'm not educating my students to what they should be knowing other than the professional knowledge. And that is very important for them to be a good person, to be a good human being. I still remember when I passed my FCPS Part 2 examination, and I went to my professor, who was my mentor and was my supervisor, Professor Shabi Zaidi, in the morning in his office. He gave me a book, and that book was about evolution of human being. And he said, "Do saal tumne bahut medicine ENT padhi hai, now you should be reading these books. Read some autobiography, read about people who have contributed to this world, so that you should know that the world is not only medicine, the world is not only what you have been doing, it's a much larger canvas, and you should be knowing about it." And he's one of those persons who I think was a very well educated person who can talk about on any subject, on any topic for hours and hours. Similarly, I have been blessed to be working with, as a house officer, Professor Rab, Muhibul Rab, a man of vision, a man I think you can talk to him, you can just sit and listen to him, and he can talk to you on any topic. It could be religion, it could be philosophy, it could be anything. Do we have examples like that today amongst ourselves? Maybe there are, but they are very few. So we need to not only educate the new generation, not only to educate our students, we need to educate ourselves also, so that we can impart something, so that we can be a role model to them, and should make them understand what this vision is all about. It's not only medical education and your profession, The world is a much bigger canvas than that, and unless we think about that, we will not be able to achieve what we have. Khalil Rahman Sahib has very correctly said that there are two distinguished characteristics. One, divisions, I should say. One is those which are contemporary education, which we are learning, and the other is the madrasa education or the religious education. Both of us are in a conflict with each other. I personally feel, as a person of a contemporary education, that what knowledge I have, they do not have. And similarly, they think that how pious I am and how knowledgeable I am in religious matter, that's the most important thing, and that is much more than knowing the contemporary education. Unfortunately, both of us are on a wrong path. We are running in different directions. And unless we combine both of them, this country is not going to progress. Having that in my mind, the last 2 years that I have been as chairman of the Higher Education Commission, I tried to convert some madrasas into universities. Bring the madrasa religious education into contemporary education. And I have been successful in converting 2 madrasas, Jamatul Rashid, which is by now it's called the Al-Ghazali University, and Jamatul Kausar, which is now the Kausar University. You might have seen boards of Kausar University admissions on the road. There are a number of boards attached there. Both these were total madrasas. But I tried to convince their administration, you should enter into contemporary education. They have started MBA, they have started law, they have started IT, and they have started finance, banking, other things. And now when these students will come out, and in addition to that, they are having the Dars-e-Nizami, Kaliyatul Sharia, Fiqh, they are studying all that along with the contemporary education. Can they be considered as a faculty of IT? Similarly, it holds good for business school, or it holds good for if they have got law departments. So they have hired people. And you will be happy to know that Al-Ghazali University, which was Jamatul Rashid, they have got 4 faculty members which they have hired from outside Pakistan. 2 of them are English people who have come over, Angrez hai. And I told them, if you have these faculty, people will have a better concept and a better understanding that you are not confining yourself to people who are only religious minded. You have got an open space, you have got an open mind. Whoever is a good teacher, he can be invited. They are paying good salaries to them, and 2 of them have come from England. They are English people, and they are teaching, one in business and the other one is in IT. So you see, a mix of these will then produce children, produce students, and will be something that will be bringing a lot of change. Medicine is fast expanding, and very correctly said that we need to have research. But unfortunately, there is no research culture in this country. I myself, being the chairman of the Sindh Higher Education Commission, we have got 30 public sector universities in Sindh and 34 private sector universities. We have got one of the biggest universities in Pakistan, the Karachi University, having 54,000 students. But do these universities have research culture? No, there is no research culture. It's not because there's a lack of, even those institutes who are considered to be very good in research. For example, HEJ is considered to be one of them. Or Nazra Panjwani Institute of ICCBS, Institute of Nazra Panjwani Institute. I was just asking them, how many patents have you got done? How many of your research has affected the mankind in a positive way? How many of your medicines have come over? Very correctly said my speaker before me that there are Muslim scientists who have done it. He has named 3 of those who have contributed. But one thing they have to see, all of them who were there, who did it, they did it in an environment in the West. None of them has been able to do it in Pakistan. Because there was an environment for research for them. There was an environment provided where they think that the research could be done, they were supported, and they were able to achieve. There may be many more who will be achieving that. But despite all the facilities that we have, we cannot blame that we do not have the facilities. Just to give a figure, that for the 30 public sector universities in Sindh, the government of Sindh is providing 43 billion rupees. As compared to in Punjab, 54 public sector universities, only 7 billion. So it's not the matter of money, it's the matter of a mindset. We do not have a research mindset, and so when I do not have a research mindset, I cannot train my students to be in research. We need to inculcate the research mindset in our students, and first we have to do that in our faculty itself, in our teachers itself, so that then can only take place. In the Muslim world, when Islam and the Muslim world was on the top of the world, what was the difference? The difference was the universities were involved in research. Education was one factor which was leading us. Why we are behind today? The reason in simple is we have lacked in education. आप ये कह सकते हैं कि चले पाकिस्तान में आपके पास इतने वसाइल नहीं हैं. What about the Gulf states? What about the Middle East countries? They have got billions and billions and billions of dollars present. But what is the research? No research. So research is to be one very important segment, and I hope PIMA can add to it. And when I came into Sindh Higher Education Commission, हमने 10 करोड़ रुपए रखे for universities, and many of you are sitting here. I can see some of you जिनको हमने funding भी दी कि आप research करें. लेकिन उस research की हमारी reality जो है, what ground reality is, उससे क्या linkage है? Food security पे आप research करें, आप climate change पे research करें, and these research should be then presented to the government in the form of recommendations which the government should follow. Guftan, Nashistan, Barkhastan. Research is done just like that. No implementation, no impact of that research. So we can talk and talk and talk very long for that, but in the end I want to congratulate PIMA for organizing this very, very important convention of the 27th convention, and I hope that in the day to come, today and tomorrow, all those people who will be talking about, who will be talking on the research, will be talking on the new subjects and topics, will attribute and have some impact on those who will be there. One thing we should not forget, that whatever responsibility is given to me, to you, we all are answerable to Allah Ta'ala for that. So if we take that responsibility as a part of that, we have to reply to our Creator for that, then with that feeling, maybe we can be able to contribute something to this country, which has given everything that we are. What I am today and what you are today is just because we have got a country which is Pakistan, and Allah Ta'ala has been blessed us with that. Thank you all very much, and thank you to PIMA and its organizer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Tariq Rafi, for his inaugural speech. I request Professor Masood Hamid to come to the stage to give the shield to Professor Tariq Rafi. Professor Masood Hamid. I request Professor Masroor Ahmed, who is sitting here, ex-Pro Vice Chancellor of the Dow University and sitting Councillor of the CPSP and the Treasurer of the CPSP. I request Professor Masroor to give the shield to Mr. Khalilur Rahman. Sir. I request Professor Iqbal Khan, the Vice Chancellor of Shifa Tamir-e-Millat University, to come to the stage. Professor Iqbal Khan, to give the shield to the Professor Tipo Siddiq. Iqbal Khan Sahab, Islamabad se tashrif laye especially. I request Professor Syed Hussain Mehdi, the Vice Chancellor of the Suhail University, to come to the stage to give the shield to Professor Shahid Noor. Professor Shahid Noor is our patron of this convention. Professor Saad Khalid Niaz is also the chief patron of the convention, but he is unable to come because of the fracture at his ankle. Professor Syed Hussain Mehdi to Shahid Noor. I request Professor Hafizur Rahman, who is the Professor of Ophthalmology and President Al-Khidmat, to give shield to our beloved President, Dr. Abdulaziz Memon. I request Dr. Misbahul Aziz, who is a renowned ophthalmologist, is the ex-president of the Dow Medical College Students Union, Dr. Misbahul Aziz, to give a shield to Dr. Iftikhar Barni. I request Dr. Misbahul Aziz. Dr. Iftikhar Barni traveled from Islamabad to Karachi. He is the Central General Secretary of the PIMA, and he is a psychiatrist by profession. Thank you very much. As the last speech of the Chairman Convention, I request Professor Atif Hafiz. He is the Chairman Convention. He made day and night work hard to arrange this show, and you see the very good show here. So I request Professor Atif Hafiz, who is the head of the Head and Neck Surgery, Dow University of Health Sciences, and director as well, for the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. मेरी जिम्मेदारी शुक्रिया अदा करने की है, लेकिन इससे पहले मैं जो हमारे पैट्रन साद खालिद नियाज़ हैं वो आ नहीं सके, लेकिन उन्होंने एक मैसेज भेजा है जो मैं पढ़ के आप लोगों को उनकी तरफ से, पैट्रन इन चीफ हमारे हैं, उनकी तरफ से ये मैसेज मैं पढ़ के सुना सकता हूँ. Honorable Chief Guests, respected members of the organizing committee of the 27th Biennial PIMA Convention, and my dear colleagues, I am grateful to PIMA for giving me this honor. I am deeply saddened not be able to be with you, all which is due to my ankle fracture, which doesn't allow me to sit for long periods. PIMA conferences focus not only on an excellent and up-to-date scientific programs, but also focus on ethical and religious issues related to our field. As they say, तालीम के साथ तरबियत भी बहुत ज़रूरी है. To be a good doctor, you need to be a good human being. I wish organizers my best wishes and pray to Allah make this conference a successful event. He has also said, as you all know, that this inaugural session, we have dedicated it to our beloved Dr. Humayun Farooq, who passed away early this year in January by the will of Allah. And Dr. Saad also has said that we are missing Humayun Farooq bhai. I pray for his success in Akhirah and Ameen. Kindly वो Humayun bhai की जो वीडियो है वो चला दें. ये एक हुमायूं भाई की छोटी सी वीडियो है. अगर ये उस स्क्रीन पे चल सके तो बहुत अच्छा है. एक अहद एक दास्तान. آپ آ جائیں شجاع, میرا خیال اطلاع نہیں ہے شاید. میں گزارش کروں گا اپنے چیف گیسٹ پروفیسر طارق رفیع سے کہ یہ شیلڈ ہمایوں فاروق بھائی کی یادگاری شیلڈ جو ہے وہ ڈاکٹر شجاع فاروق کو دیں. میں آخر میں یہ ہماری انوگرل سیریمنی ختم ہو چکی ہے. میں بہت شکر گزار ہوں پروفیسر طارق رفیع کا کہ جنہوں نے اپنی انتہائی شدید مصروفیات میں سے ہمارے لیے وقت نکالا. کل ہی امریکہ سے واپس آئے ہیں اور آج بلکہ خاص طور سے اس لیے آئے ہیں کہ آج ہماری انوگرل میں ان کو شرکت کرنی تھی. اس کے علاوہ ڈاکٹر ٹیپو صدیق جو بھی امریکہ سے ہمارے اس پروگرام کے لیے آئے اور انہوں نے اپنا ایک اسکالری لیکچر دیا. خلیل رحمان چشتی صاحب, آپ کا بہت بہت شکریہ. جتنے ہمارے مہمانان گرامی ہیں, آپ سب میں فردن نام نہیں لے سکتا سب کا ظاہر ہے، لیکن جتنے لوگ مختلف شہروں سے مختلف صوبوں سے سفر کر کے کراچی تشریف لائے، اور جو لوگ کراچی میں موجود ہیں اور انہوں نے اپنے قیمتی وقت میں سے آج صبح وقت نکالا اور ہمارے اس انوگرل سیشن میں آئے، میں ان سب کو شکر گزار ہوں۔ میں تمام فیکلٹی کا جو آنے والے سائنٹیفک ہمارے پروگرامز ہیں اس کے اندر جو وقت دیں گے اور اپنے لیکچرز اور اپنے مقالے پیش کریں گے، ان سب کا بھی بہت شکر گزار ہوں۔ میں تمام کمیٹیز کا، کسی ایک کمیٹی کی بات نہیں، جنہوں نے اس میں رات دن کام کیا ہے اور اس پورے کنونشن کو کامیاب بنایا ہے، میں ان تمام کمیٹیز، ان کے انچارجز، ان کے ممبرز، ان سب کا بہت شکر گزار ہوں جنہوں نے اس کنونشن کو کامیاب بنانے کے لیے دن رات انت تک محنت کی ہے۔ میں ان تمام فارماسیوٹیکلز کا میں فردن نام نہیں لے سکتا، اس لیے کہ ایک بہت بڑی طویل لسٹ ہے اور اس کو گنوانے میں میرا خیال ہے 15 منٹ لگ جائیں گے، لیکن جس طرح انہوں نے اس خالص ایکیڈمک ایکٹیویٹی کو سپورٹ کیا ہے، میں آپ سب فارماسیوٹیکلز کا بہت شکر گزار ہوں۔ میں ای کامرس اور پکسل پوائنٹ جو ہمارے ایونٹ آرگنائزر ہیں اور ہماری تمام اس ایکٹیویٹی کا جو آپ دیکھ رہے ہیں یہاں پہ، اس کا ارینجمنٹ انہوں نے کیا ہے، میں ان سب کا بہت شکر گزار ہوں، اور اللہ تعالیٰ کا لاکھ شکر ہے کہ اس نے ہمیں اس قابل کیا کہ ہم اس کنونشن کو انعقاد کرنے میں کامیاب ہوئے۔ تمام حمد اور تمام تعریف اول و آخر اللہ تعالیٰ کے لیے۔ بہت شکریہ۔ میں آپ سب سے گزارش کروں گا کہ آپ چائے تیار ہے اس کے لیے تشریف لے چلیں، اور چیف گیسٹ سے میں گزارش کروں گا کہ ہمارے ساتھ چلیں تاکہ ایگزیبیشن کا افتتاح کر سکیں۔
خواتین کے لیے ہال نمبر 1 میں ہے، یہاں سے اسٹریٹ جائیں گے تو خواتین کو ہائی ٹی کے لیے اس طرف جانا ہے۔ مرد حضرات کے لیے ہال 2 میں ہے، اور کوپن اپنے ساتھ رکھیں، وہاں پر جو ہے وہ کوپن لیے جائیں گے ہائی ٹیز کے، لنچ کے ٹائم پہ لنچ کے، تو آپ کو یہ خیال رکھنا ہے۔ ہمارے چیف گیسٹ اس وقت جو ہے وہ ایگزیبیشن کی انوگریشن کریں گے، تو کچھ لوگ ان کے ساتھ فارماسیوٹیکل کمپنی کی جو ایگزیبیشن ہے اس میں شریک ہوں گے، تو ان سے باقی لوگوں سے گزارش ہے کہ وہاں پر تشریف لے جائیں۔ اور ہائی ٹی کے فوراً بعد ہمارے 4 سائنٹیفک پیرالل سیشنز ہیں، تو اس میں آپ لوگوں کو تشریف لے جانا ہے چاروں جگہ پہ۔ والنٹیئرز موجود ہیں، گائیڈ کر سکتے ہیں۔ ٹائم آپ ڈاکٹر مرزا اظہر، ڈاکٹر آفتاب، ان کا بھی شکر گزار ہوں جو پی ایم ای کی ریپرزنٹیشن یہاں کر رہے ہیں۔ مرزا صاحب مصباح بھائی سے ملتے ہوئے۔ ڈاکٹر شارق مسعود اسپیشلی سعودی عرب سے تشریف لائے۔
میں صحت کے شعبے اور سماجی خدمات کے اعلیٰ مقاصد کے حصول کے لیے پاکستان اسلامک میڈیکل ایسوسی ایشن کی بنیاد رکھی گئی۔ 50 ڈاکٹروں سے شروع ہونے والی یہ تنظیم آج پاکستان بھر میں 6000 سے زائد ممبران پر مشتمل ہے۔ پیما کا بنیادی مقصد اسلامی تعلیمات اور اخلاقی اصولوں کی بنیاد پر اپنے ممبر ڈاکٹروں کی پیشہ ورانہ اور شخصی تربیت کرنا ہے، جس کے لیے ملک بھر میں اس کے تمام یونٹس باقاعدگی سے پروگرام نشر کرتے ہیں۔ پیما کی سرگرمیوں میں کنٹینیوس پروفیشنل ڈیولپمنٹ، طبی سمپوزیم، سیمینارز، کانفرنسز، لیکچرز اور ورکشاپس، ایتھکس اینڈ پروفیشنلزم پروگرامز، پسماندہ علاقوں میں مفت طبی خدمات کی فراہمی، طبی عملے کے جائز مسائل کو حل کرنا اور پاکستان میں صحت اور طبی تعلیم کے نظام کو اسلامی اصولوں کے مطابق تشکیل دینا شامل ہے۔ پاکستان میڈیکل اینڈ ڈینٹل کاؤنسل PMDC سے رجسٹرڈ ڈاکٹرز اور ڈینٹل سرجنز جو پیما کے نصب العین اور پروگرام سے اتفاق رکھتے ہیں، پیما کے ممبرز بن سکتے ہیں۔ میڈیکل و ڈینٹل طلباء اور طالبات بھی پیما کے ایسوسیٹ ممبرز بن سکتے ہیں۔ ہر 2 سال بعد پیما کا مرکزی کنونشن منعقد ہوتا ہے، جس میں اگلے 2 سال کے لیے مرکزی صدر اور مرکزی کمیٹی کا انتخاب کیا جاتا ہے۔ پیما کو یہ امتیاز حاصل ہے کہ اس نے اپنی سرگرمیوں میں اس بات کو اہمیت دی کہ نہ صرف ہیلتھ کیئر پروفیشنل کی حیثیت سے اپنی پیشہ ورانہ مہارت کو دور جدید کے تقاضوں کے مطابق ڈھالا جائے، بلکہ انسان اور مسلمان ہونے کی حیثیت سے اپنی ذمہ داریوں کو بھی سمجھا جائے۔ پیما نے پہلی بار طبی کیمپ لگائے جاتے ہیں جہاں ضرورت مند افراد کا علاج کیا جاتا ہے اور موتیا کے آپریشن مفت کیے جاتے ہیں، بلکہ بیرون ملک بھی بالخصوص افریقی ممالک میں آنکھوں کے مفت آپریشن کیے جاتے ہیں۔ پیما کے تحت مظفر آباد اور مانسہرہ میں 3 ویلفیئر اسپتال، ملک کے مختلف شہروں میں 20 ذیابیطس کلینکس اور 12 ٹیلی میڈیسن سینٹرز قائم ہیں۔ پیما کے تحت طب، فقہ اور دین سے متعلق 30 سے زائد پبلیکیشنز بھی ڈاکٹرز کی رہنمائی کے لیے شائع کی جا چکی ہیں۔ پیما اور فیما کے نمائندے مختلف بین الاقوامی فورمز بشمول اقوام متحدہ، WHO اور OIC میں مؤثر طریقے سے نمائندگی کا فریضہ سر انجام دے رہے ہیں۔ پیما فیڈریشن آف اسلامک میڈیکل ایسوسیشنز فیما کی بھی بانی رکن ہے، جس میں ایشیا، یورپ اور ریاست ہائے متحدہ امریکہ کی 50 سے زائد اسلامک میڈیکل ایسوسیشنز شامل ہیں۔ پیما اسلامی اصولوں کی روشنی میں پاکستان میں صحت کے شعبے میں نمایاں خدمات انجام دے رہی ہے، مستقبل میں بھی اپنی خدمات کو جاری رکھے گی۔ ہم پاکستان کے تمام ہیلتھ کیئر پروفیشنلز کو دعوت دیتے ہیں کہ وہ پیما کا ممبر بنیں اور اس کی سرگرمیوں میں شمولیت اختیار کریں۔ پیما میں شامل ہو کر آپ کو پیشہ ورانہ مہارت کے لیے معروف ماہرین سے براہ راست مستفید ہونے کا منفرد موقع ملے گا، ساتھ ہی اس پیشے کو انسانیت کی خدمت کے ذریعے اللہ تعالیٰ کی خوشنودی حاصل کرنے کے لیے استعمال کرنے کا بہترین ماحول بھی میسر آئے گا انشاءاللہ۔ میں صحت کے شعبے اور سماجی خدمات کے اعلیٰ مقاصد کے حصول کے لیے پاکستان اسلامک میڈیکل ایسوسیشن کی بنیاد رکھی گئی۔ 50 ڈاکٹروں سے شروع ہونے والی یہ تنظیم آج پاکستان بھر میں 6000 سے زائد ممبران پر مشتمل ہے۔ پیما کا بنیادی مقصد اسلامی تعلیمات اور اخلاقی اصولوں کی بنیاد پر اپنے ممبر ڈاکٹروں کی پیشہ ورانہ اور شخصی تربیت کرنا ہے، جس کے لیے ملک بھر میں اس کے تمام یونٹس باقاعدگی سے پروگرام نشر کرتے ہیں۔ پیما کی سرگرمیوں میں کنٹینیوس پروفیشنل ڈیولپمنٹ، طبی سمپوزیم، سیمینارز، کانفرنسز، لیکچرز اور ورکشاپس، ایتھکس اینڈ پروفیشنلزم پروگرامز، پسماندہ علاقوں میں مفت طبی خدمات کی فراہمی، طبی عملے کے جائز مسائل کو حل کرنا اور پاکستان میں صحت اور طبی تعلیم کے نظام کو اسلامی اصولوں کے مطابق تشکیل دینا شامل ہے۔ پاکستان میڈیکل اینڈ ڈینٹل کاؤنسل PMDC سے رجسٹرڈ ڈاکٹرز اور ڈینٹل سرجنز جو پیما کے نصب العین اور پروگرام سے اتفاق رکھتے ہیں، پیما کے ممبرز بن سکتے ہیں۔ میڈیکل اور ڈینٹل طلباء اور طالبات بھی پیما کے ایسوسیٹ ممبرز بن سکتے ہیں۔ ہر 2 سال بعد پیما کا مرکزی کنونشن منعقد ہوتا ہے، جس میں اگلے 2 سال کے لیے مرکزی صدر اور مرکزی کمیٹی کا انتخاب کیا جاتا ہے۔ پیما کو یہ امتیاز حاصل ہے کہ اس نے اپنی سرگرمیوں میں اس بات کو اہمیت دی کہ نہ صرف ہیلتھ کیئر پروفیشنل کی حیثیت سے اپنی پیشہ ورانہ مہارت کو دور جدید کے تقاضوں کے مطابق ڈھالا جائے، بلکہ انسان اور مسلمان ہونے کی حیثیت سے اپنی ذمہ داریوں کو بھی سمجھا جائے۔ پیما نے پہلی بار طبی اخلاقیات کو ایک پروگرام کے طور پر متعارف کروایا اور الحمدللہ اب یہ صحت کی تعلیم کا ایک لازمی جز بن چکا ہے۔ پیما نہ صرف ڈاکٹروں کے مسائل کو حل کرنے کی کوشش کرتی ہے، بلکہ ان کے جملہ امور میں آگاہی، ایڈوکیسی اور عملی تبدیلی کا بھی فریضہ انجام دیتی ہے۔ اس کے ساتھ ساتھ مریضوں کے مفادات کا تحفظ اور بیماری